All right, I'd like to call this Finance Committee meeting to order. This is our last one for this year. I know there's a lot of excitement out there. We'll start off with requests for council action. Finance, we have 18213 renewal public defenders contract, 18214 increase PO 2018-1244 CT Consultants fiscal year 16 CHIP, 18215 budget amendments, 18216 authorized fund advances, 18217 Linwood Lake Dam and Outlet Structure discussion, 18218 bids for Westmouth Reconstruction Phase 3, 18219 City Hall parking structure discussion and update, 18220 purchase of a 2019 Ford F-250 Super Cab for the parks. Discussion. 18221 job creation grant, Ravico Americas LLC, 18222 increase expenditure for R&R truck sales sanitation, 18223 amend ordinance 15018 community revitalization district, 18224 amend planning and zoning code various text amendments, 18225 amend salaries and benefits code approved job description for sanitation, 18226 additional part-time law clerk, 18227 increased expenditure for Northwest Servicers Inc. sanitation, and 18228 increased expenditure for Walter Haverfield for the law department. All right. 18213 renew public defender contract. Mr. Huber.
We are required by the state statutes to have a contract with the public defender, and we renew this contract every year. There's nothing that's changed in the proposed contract from last year's, so I respectfully request that the council approve this contract.
Questions regarding the public defender's contract? There's an emergency clause in this one too.
Move to approve with the emergency clause.
Second, including emergency clause.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 18214 increased PO for CT Consultants for the fiscal year 16 grant. Jonathan?
Yep, thank you. We need to increase the line item number 9 in the existing PO by $7,800. Help pay some remaining balance for soft costs with program year 16 CHIP program. The grant agreement was for $239,500. That includes hard costs and soft costs incurred by the consultant. The soft costs will be increased by the additional $7,800 within the amount total encumbered onto the CT purchase order. That way we can make a final payment to them and finish out that program. Emergency clause is requested because we need to have all the invoices paid out by December 15th. Thank you.
Question for Jonathan?
Jonathan, thank you, Mr. President. How can we exceed the number of repairs? Like if we set up, we're going to do 20 or whatever that number is. How did that get past us?
It's just it's a goal. So if we do more than we're kind of having the goal in the grant, that's good.
Oh, that's, okay.
Yeah, so it's actually good because then we're helping, the grant is helping more houses in the city of Medina and the city of Brunswick. So that incurred more, since we did more, that incurs more soft costs through CT consultants to do a lot of the management of the application process and the contract review process.
Okay, so these dollars are coming from the grant, not from the general fund?
Yep, correct. It's all
Okay.
grant dollars.
All right. And what's included in the soft costs?
Basically, scope creation, determination of potential estimated costs for the individual repair items. So, if it's water heater, how much is that going to cost? Roof work, how much is that going to cost? That those types of items.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Move to approve with the emergency clause.
Second, including emergency clause.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 18215 budget amendments. The first one we have here is 2018-061, a check from First Day School Supplies.
It's a pass-through.
Is what?
It's a pass-through. We received a contribution.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 2018-060, we have Main Street Medina contribution.
Can we talk about this?
Matt?
Yeah, good evening. I put in front of you our draft 2018 Main Street Medina year in review. Just a couple quick things I'd like to point out to you. On the front page, under 2018 program highlights, after 10 years, we expanded the Main Street footprint to include what is currently being called Southtown. So the area is bounded by Smith, Broadway, Lafayette, and Huntington Roads. It's an opportunity for us to help further develop the historic district and the neighborhood, and to bring in more member businesses and to do more events in different areas. We've hired a part-time administrative program assistant, which is going to allow us to do more work and help out greatly. We have expanded the Medina Farmers Market to include a midweek market. That was a targeted idea to focus on the low to moderate income population as citizens of the community. And we're still working on the residential historic restoration program in the village or the historic area of the city. On page 2, real quick, if you would, under city investment of $30,000, we've had a really terrific year this year. So for every dollar the city invested with Main Street Medina, we generated an additional $7 of funding and in-kind support. But I think the really important number is under bullet point 3. Based on attendance estimates at our events, we had almost 150,000 people come through Main Street Medina events in the farmers market, which if you take a conservative estimate of $10 per head, that's almost $1.5 million return on investment. In the past, that number has been 41 or 42 to 1, and to have it up at 48 to 1 is pretty incredible. So we're very grateful for your support and hope we can continue that for the next decade.
Thank you. Any questions from Adam generally about Main Street? Do we like it?
Excellent.
Good check.
Thank
Keep
you.
up the good work.
Thank you.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2018-062 bicentennial book sales.
We received this money appropriated to be able to use it.
Okay, question?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 2018-063 advances.
This is the appropriation to roll these advances at the end of the year.
Are these all of them from the general fund or just some of them?
These are all general fund.
Are there more? There's more than this.
There's more than this. These are just the ones that are more than a year old that we're rolling.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2018-064 stormwater and street funds.
Increasing appropriations in these funds because at the end of the year, we're out.
We're out. Is that from the department head or?
Well, okay, you have agency, which is refunds, it's money in, money out, but we didn't
Okay.
anticipate there'd be this much, and then unclaimed monies is the same thing. The street resurfacing is because we had to repay that in advance.
Gotcha.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 2018-065 street maintenance. This is for a deposit? Wait. Is there one on here for that one?
Yeah, this is Nino's, $60,000 Nino's.
That's just a correction, moving money to,
Yeah.
into the maintenance facilities.
Oh, I got you.
Thank you.
From the 102.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, 8422 Fetchco deposit.
Yeah, I would just address this real quick. It's $10,035 to money for environmental impact report as part of the ongoing planning commission case with Fetchco and their heavy manufacturing land use. In order to do this project, the city's been coordinating the consultant. So this money is 100% deposit by the applicant to pay for the report. So we're just allocating it to the 2018 budget because the payment of this and this project's going to span the 2 budget years.
Just by way of a recap, this is Fetchco litigation in its 3rd round, and it involves the applicant's request to run a concrete cup crushing machine on his property. His property is adjacent to the fire deck's property and some of the residents' tenant buildings to the east of his property, and the question involves what impact is there going to be involving noise and dust on surrounding people. And so this expert will be testing the impact of noise and dust while Mr. Fetchko grinds the concrete pile that is currently there now over the next couple of months. And the planning commission has required that he can grind the pile he has, but we want to test the impact as he does so over the next 2 months, so as to try to have a factual basis for determining what to do about his permanent request for concrete crushing. So those are the issues.
Questions?
This has been an ongoing problem, correct?
Correct. Part of the problem, Mr. Fetchko's represented by an attorney, I'm representing the city, in order to help the commission with making decisions and not making any mistakes. I've asked Todd Hunt to represent the commission in these situations. You know, a local commission's made up of mostly individuals from the community. They're being asked to act as judges. They have lawyers making objections. They're called upon to make judicial decisions. Typically, they don't know what to do. And so by having Mr. Hunt help with the process, we avoid another appeal up to the Common Pleas Court in hopes that we don't make a mistake here at the trial level. So it's been an ongoing tug of war.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 18-216, authorized advance request. Keith?
These are advances we have to do at the end of the year.
These are new ones.
A couple of these are rolls. The airport one is a roll. I think they're all rollover.
Are they? Okay. Same as before, if you guys remember, we advanced cash about 3.5 million now? 3 million?
About 3 to 4 million.
Oh, we can pay
general
back
fund.
over time.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 18-218, bids for Westmouth Road reconstruction, phase 3. Patrick?
This is phase 3. This will be the section from Lake Road to Commerce Drive. Like the others, will be a complete reconstruction, tear out, replacement of pavement, water lines, sewer. We did apply for and receive a $455,000 grant to help pay for the cost of this.
And what's the timing of that?
We would like to bid as soon as we're authorized.
So it's going to be done next year?
Yes.
It'll be done before the end of next year?
Yes, done before the fair.
Oh, okay, that's great. You don't want to miss the fair.
Got those bunnies coming.
Patrick, since John's putting in the plug for the fair, can you make sure we coordinate with Rob Travis about? Because
Oh, yeah,
obviously
yeah.
that's right in front of the bus.
Talking to him. They know it's coming.
He's already on top of it. You contacted the fair board, told
He
them
didn't like
everything
it,
too?
but
Did you talk to the fair board?
I have not.
Well,
It doesn't,
make a phone call.
it's not right up against their property, but we can.
Well, just let them know everything's gonna be fine, because once they see the road closed, they'll probably wonder what's going on. Okay. Any other questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And 18-219, City Hall parking structure discussion and an update from Mr. Patton.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of touch base with council. I don't think there's any action you need to do tonight. We did go through the RFQ process. We're looking for qualified design-build teams. We're happy to have 5 different design-build teams submit for this project. We've reviewed those and are recommending, well, we have selected 3 to invite to the next stage. These would be the 3 shortlisted firms. CPS Construction Group from Cheswick, Pennsylvania, the Ruling Company from Sharon Center, Ohio, and Mike Coates Construction from Niles, Ohio. Sometime in January, we anticipate releasing the proposals, and each of those 3 firms then will respond. As with the last time, this is a design-build process, so the proposal is, there's two proposals. There's a cost proposal and a design proposal. Each of them gets scored. And we don't need to make these decisions tonight, but something you might think about. The last time we did it for the other deck, it was 50% for each one. So in other words, the score, the cost counted 50% of your score, and the design was rated by a team. We'll get to that, but that was 50% of the score as well. We can do that again. We can change that. Kind of need to have your input on that. So think about that. And as far as the team, the last time I listed out the 5 folks that were on the review team last time. Excuse me. We had a city council representative, we had our former planning director, myself, a representative of the city historic preservation board, and a representative of the county. We need to come up with another team. It doesn't have to be 5, it could be 3, it could be 10, but 5 seemed to work. The only change from last time, Mr. Jacob was there from the county because the county was a financial partner with us. So I think we all thought it was appropriate that they would have a say in the review. I've got some ideas about who might make up that 5th one, maybe a local architect or engineer or a property owner in the district, but kind of open to any suggestions anyone might have. This would be the group that would, each of these 3 firms will be putting on a presentation of their design, and that group scores them. So it's a pretty weighty, there's a lot of, it's really a short commitment, only a couple of days, but they're the ones that would basically decide who the contractor's going to be and what the final design might look like. So if you have any thoughts or ideas, feel free to let me know. And lastly, we do, before we release the proposal, want to have a workshop of sorts to go over a lot of kind of design questions. We haven't set the date, it'll be in January, but I'd like to have somebody from council on there, if nothing else, just to know what's being talked about, but more than that, to give opinions of the, this affects the final design of the project. So that's it.
And when do you anticipate breaking ground?
Probably in April.
So we gotta get moving on it to get,
Yeah, we want to release the proposals in January. Normally when we do a bid, it's 2 to 3 week turnaround, but they have to do quite a bit of design work, so you give them a longer period. So we will look at probably sometime in March, having the review and award for the projects, and then really as soon as they want to get started after that.
questions about all this? How is this gonna coincide with the CAC's process of the building on Liberty?
Well, I'm not sure what their timeline is. I guess we need to coordinate that. It is possible they could both go at the same time with a little bit of coordination.
Do we ask in our request for proposals the possibility of doing it jointly or coterminous or and not, I mean, for mobilization purposes?
Having like our contractor,
No, having them do their project at the same time we do our project, or can they look at that in their proposals to see if it works or doesn't work? 'Cause I'm sure they know more about working with another contractor than we do.
oh yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, these contractors aren't really building type contractors, they build parking decks. So they would be interested in doing.
Well, since the
building project, but-
building is gonna abut the parking deck, I mean, there has to be some type of coordination.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Well, and that's one of those things in that design meeting I think we need to go over.
Which one? All right. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out what would be the most efficient way to do it. Because what we don't want to have happen, in my mind, is spend a year building a parking deck and taking a mobilization probably on our parking lot across the street, and then starting all over again and having a year of building a building or whatever, 9 months, doing the same thing.
Yeah, it could be. I'm not sure what their timeline is.
Well, we have to communicate maybe with Kimberly, and you guys can talk about how we best move forward both.
Yeah. 'Cause I know that ours does have a time constraint. For our grant, we have to be under contract in April. That's kind of driving us.
Yes.
We have 2 years after that to finish the project. We have to be under contract by sometime in April. I'm not sure what their timeline is.
The only question I would have would be, I mean, it'd be great to have them both coincide with each other and get both done as quickly as possible, but I don't know how much of the current parking lot where we're planning on constructing a building is gonna be impacted with the parking deck. If it's not, you know, I mean, to close that area also, I mean, if we did both projects simultaneously, we're close to each other, we'd be losing a lot of parking for that period of time.
This is gonna be a huge impact on our parking until it's done. And the whole footprint not gonna be really usable.
Oh, well, then that's not gonna make a difference then.
Yeah.
I guess the question would be, at a minimum, the parking structure, who's ever constructing a parking structure has to understand that they're gonna have to design it so the building can be connected to it somehow with, I don't know how.
That's one of the things we need to go over in the design meeting, so you'll wanna be there.
That's the question.
I recommend
The more we're researching, there's just a whole lot of costs.
I second that.
Well, I just wanna make sure it works, I don't wanna have it go through and say, oh,
Right.
we forgot that.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of cost to that. What we're hearing is it's a lot, if you leave a 20-foot separation, it saves a whole lot of design and construction costs. So it's a decision we're gonna have to make.
I don't think we can afford to have a 20-foot gap. Long-term, I mean, what are we trying to do here? The goal is to try to maximize the limited space we have. So putting gaps in it, that doesn't really accomplish that. I mean, it may be more money, but long-term, it'll probably be better income producing asset.
I second that with the emergency clause.
Well, I just want to make sure that we don't make a mistake, right?
No, we need to talk through that, you know, so we see what the numbers are and what the benefits are.
All right, so you may want to have a meeting with the CIC, so there's discussion about how to do that, because they have to get their proposals out quickly
Yeah,
also.
I would think when the CIC puts out the request for proposals, we could encourage that they understand this. We expect this to be done in collaboration with the
Mhm.
parking deck, and then
Right.
vice versa with the parking deck. We expect you're gonna be able to work with these, and if they're not willing to accept it under those terms, then
Well, they may say it might be better to build the parking deck first and then build after, just so that there's room and maybe it's more cost effective. I have no idea. They can answer those questions.
right.
So Patrick, where would the staging area be? Like, where do they put, when you start the project?
The most obvious would be where the old Masonic Temple was, that grassy area there.
Okay, so that would be, that's not impacted, so that's where you could stage the construction of the parking deck.
Well, that's where, you know, they would stage materials,
Materials,
equipment.
yes.
Equipment, yes,
Probably
sir.
they're gonna have to have a job trailer out there.
Right.
That's where I envision that stuff to be.
Fenced in.
Yeah, I would invest in.
No, it's exciting.
It is exciting.
It's going to be disruptive, but exciting.
It's such an interesting project because it'll be the biggest thing built in the district. I mean, it's the biggest advance in the district in
10 years.
10 years.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a huge thing for us. And it's exciting. I mean, the completion of it'll be exciting as well, but clearly not a simple thing to do.
Now, let me bring up the other question. Did you at all talk about putting in, or is this a post-construction item, the hookups for electric cars, a couple of them, like
Yes,
Walmart
yeah.
has or something? 'Cause they-
That's, apparently that's what you do now when you're building a parking deck, so it's kind of a standard thing for them.
Oh.
I guess the question is how many?
Are they donated by the state? I mean, how do you get them?
No, you know, this would be, I assume we're gonna be charging like we do at the airport. I mean, it's a fee-based.
Well, no, but I mean, how do you get, does the state help donate the machines
We're
themselves?
gonna apply for grant funding through First Energy. We have already met with them about that, because they had that money that came from the Volkswagen diesel fuel settlement.
Oh, okay, good.
And so there's funding opportunities out there, and they said that they wanted to work with us, First Energy wants to work with us, but I do think that we should be researching not only the fueling station, but the charging, the lamp post, and maybe better technology out there where these lamp posts and charging stations and fueling stations can all be tied into one thing.
Right, I know Walmart has them, right? They have like
So-
4 of them. Maybe we can ask them, what do you guys think? They're a pretty big corporation.
You know,
They may be able to help.
She had leave it to
And
Kimberly
just-
to handle
No.
that.
And just
Yeah, she
with
can.
the parking deck itself, I think whether the deck is attached to the private development or not attached, I think we really need to talk to the developers to see what's gonna make the most sense for that development. Does it make sense to have it attached or not attached?
We could probably talk to 10 different developers and get a few different answers to that question.
There might be a standard, though. I mean, there might be some kind of a real reason why.
Exactly.
If it's such a profound thing, but if it wasn't attached, and you had 20 feet, what would go there?
Parking spaces.
You could put parking spaces on the ground level, it could be green space.
Yeah, but you lose parking spaces.
You lose the secondary, yeah.
That's why,
I don't disagree with you, I'm just saying, it sounds like there might be a real reason why that is not as easy as it seems to us.
maybe not, but I think there, I mean, I'm in a building that they built the parking deck and they redid the building and they're attached. I mean, they're not physically attached, there's a gap, but, you
How
know,
big's the gap?
probably about 4 inches. That's it. They're not physically attached. But they,
Can you park bikes in there?
you might lose the bike, yeah, we should probably put a bike there somewhere. But no, these are all good things.
Yeah, they're good.
Okay, any other questions?
No.
All right, keep plugging forward. 18-220, purchase of a 2019 Ford F-250 for the Parks Department. Jansen?
Thank you. This purchase was identified in our 2019 budget. It'll be replacing a 2008 GMC Sierra that has about 84,000 miles on it.
Okay. Questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 18-221, job creation grant for Ravago, I keep saying Ravago. It could be that too. Ravago Americas LLC. Kimberly.
Thank you, Mr. President. This request is for the mayor to enter into a job creation grant agreement with Ravago Americas LLC for the purpose of establishing a business located at 5192 Lake Road, creating 75 new full-time positions to the city of Medina by 2022. The company will have an investment of approximately $97,450,000 into this project. The 75 new full-time positions will create payroll estimated at $2,710,166 over a 3-year period, ramping up mid-2019 to 2020 would be the first wave of hiring with 55 new full-time positions. And then in 2021, another 10 full-time positions, and then in 2022, the final 10 positions, full-time positions. The grant agreement provides Ravago with a grant up to 40% of new payroll taxes to the city of Medina for 5 years. So what council would be essentially approving dollar-wise over that 5-year period is $67,754.15, and that's just if they meet that 75 and that exact number. We do allow for that 25% overage. So on the high end, the maximum grant over the 5-year period is $84,692.69. What we would be collecting over the 5-year period plus the ramp-up period would be $225,439.53. This grant agreement was reviewed by the law director of the draft. He reviewed that draft and has approved it. It's also been reviewed by the company and they have approved it. The Business Development Committee met and recommended the grant agreement to council. And just as a reminder for council and the public, that the job creation grants are paid for through non-income tax generated revenues. Thank you.
Question?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Kimberly. 18-222, increased PO 2018-480 R&R truck sales for the sanitation department. Mr. Capoli?
Thank you, Mr. President. We had this initial PO for $15,000. We were hopeful we could do the year. $1,000 added to this, to make it 16 to finish out the next couple of weeks.
Questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 18-223, amend ordinance 150-18, Community Revitalization District. Kimberly?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. So ordinance 15018 established the City of Medina Revitalization District, and we sent everything into the state of Ohio, and then through the review process, we realized that the footprint on the map is actually 89 acres and not 86.7 as we originally thought, so there was an error in that original calculation. This request is to amend the ordinance so that all of our documents are accurate, and we have to send updated information into the state of Ohio. We have also asked John and Patty Stahl to revise the petition so that their documents match up with ours, referencing the correct acreage as well. We are requesting the emergency clause because our application is now down at the state of Ohio, and they cannot set up the revitalization district in their system until we have all the information, that correct information into them. So that's what we're doing. Thank you.
Questions on that?
Move to approve the emergency clause.
Second, including emergency clause?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 18-224, amend planning and zoning code, various text amendments. John?
Yeah, so these are text amendments that went to the planning commission on November 8th of this year. Generally, just to kind of like find some pieces that, you know, there's some parts that are corrections from past omissions, and then just some procedural items that can kind of, you know, get with the overall theme of solutions and not obstacles. So under 110901, the changes as proposed, basically this is the threshold for administrative approval of changes or additions or expansions of existing sites. Right now, it's 1,000 square feet or 2,000 square feet for industrial, or 10 parking spaces for parking lot expansion. Those are really minuscule amounts when you talk about real estate development and building construction. So if it's 1,100 square feet for a commercial building, it's got to go to planning commission, so that's an extra 3-week process where that permit could be approved administratively through the building permit and zoning certificate review in several days. And they still have to meet all the underlying zoning code requirements, height, landscaping, setbacks, all those items. And in there, I just kind of talk about a couple of projects throughout the last couple of years that have been relatively small, minor projects that had to go to planning commission. But if you drove by some of them today, you wouldn't even know anything changed, because they were so small in comparison to what was there at the beginning.
But does it affect, if they're in a historic district, you still have to go through historic planning? I mean, does that cut it out of that, or is it just the planning commission, or if any of these things happen in the historic district, you just don't make the determination, it still goes through the historic planning?
It would still go through historic preservation
Preservation?
in the historic district. This would just be up to 5,000 for a commercial property. If you're in the historic district, it's pretty much all C3 or C2 or public facilities. In the C2, you can't go over 5,000 square feet of footprint anyways. That's the maximum allowed for any given building. And the likelihood of a large addition happening that's close to that onto any of our existing buildings is fairly low right now, and it would still go through the design and historic preservation guidelines of the Historic Preservation Board, which is separate, you know, that's a whole separate regulatory framework from the planning and zoning code.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but Paul, you're on this, I just wanted, because this has been for a while, and we don't want to change something, and then we're going to say, oh, we should have changed that. So what is from listening to all this on the planning commission, I don't want to get in a situation, because we haven't changed things in the planning code for a long time. I don't know if that's good or bad.
Well, I think with some of the things that are coming up before the planning commission, we've seen that some of the items do need to be updated, okay, to reflect current conditions, current thought processes, et cetera. With regard to streamlining some of the things, I think this is good. when it comes to the historic district, I don't see why or we would want to change anything there with regard to what they're doing, you know, with having to come before the board and taking that away, you know, up to the 5,000 square feet, you know, letting, you know, keeping that at the board. And that if it's anything over, it just doesn't happen.
Well, no, I was just concerned about the one number 4, about it changing, and there's have to do a significant change in the exterior of the buildings, or the group of buildings, or facade changes, roof lines, and all that stuff that was put in there for a specific purpose, and I guess I just didn't want anything to change that you wouldn't still have to go through those processes to make sure that they don't change the look of things. Now, in a historic district, that's probably not true, but in the outline, I guess the question is, it would just be mainly dealing with the mixed use and the overlay districts that lead into the square. I would assume that would be the impacts that would be most likely, because anywhere else, I don't think anybody would.
This doesn't have an impact on residential.
Yes, it does.
It does have an impact on residential.
No.
Well, it says right here.
If you're doing an addition to a single-family house.
Yes.
Outside of the transitional corridor overlay district, you can do it just through permit.
Right.
For sure.
This is pretty much just commercial and
But, so
industrial
but it doesn't
properties.
impact on, if you're in the overlay district, nothing's changed there.
You still.
If you're
in the-
residential.
Yeah, you still have to go through a building addition, if you're doing a building addition or something, or significant changes, that's a different regulatory framework than
Then-
the site plan review process.
Right.
We've got site plan review, we've got the certificate of appropriateness approval through the transitional corridor overlay district, and the certificate of appropriateness process through the historic district. And these changes are just for site plan review only, subject to planning commission review stuff. So projects would still theoretically, you know, if you're on North Court Street and somebody's doing an addition to one of the buildings that's in the transitional corridor overlay district north of Friendship, they would still have to go to planning commission for a certificate of appropriateness through the transitional corridor overlay district. So there's still bounds and guidelines that are applying, but, you know, one of the examples is Vexer on West Smith. They did a 3,400 square foot addition to a 34,000 square foot building to the rear. They had to go to planning commission. It's under construction now. In a year, you drive by there, you wouldn't know any different. There wouldn't be any difference, but they had to go through that extra 3-week process through a ministerial review. Is there public benefit to that type of situation occurring? I don't see that there is.
Question?
I have a question about the sign. Non-conforming signs.
Yeah.
Just kind of, if you could touch on that, just explain to me how that cleaned up under 3D.
Oh, we're moving on. Oh, I thought we were going to go through each one.
Oh, okay, never mind.
You wanna go, I mean.
Yeah, I thought we were going to go in order.
through
Yes.
each one, so.
Anybody have any questions on the first one? Any more questions on that one? No. Okay, next one.
The purpose statement of 114101, that's the purpose statement for the I-1 industrial district. What is being replaced is a mistake, leftover omission that during the 2011 to 2013 large text amendment that was being done to the planning and zoning code. What is in the code now is actually the purpose statement for the C3 zoning district, which is not appropriate for the I-1 district. So what is being proposed for amendment is a slightly adjusted purpose statement from prior to 2011. It was basically the purpose statement that we had for the I-1 zoning district for a very long time, prior to 2011, which is an appropriate purpose statement for an industrial district. That one's pretty straightforward, that amendment.
What is the, I guess when you just read the statement itself for the I-1 district, free from encroachment of residential and industrial uses. Oh, institutional. Oh. When you say encroachment, does that mean there'd be, and we're not talking adjacent, we're talking.
Yeah, this is the intent is like, okay, properties that are zoned I-1 should kind of stay that way. They were zoned that way on purpose, so
Okay.
incorporating residential development into the midst of an industrial district is not appropriate, is basically what it's
Because we're coming up with those right now. We have one that's kind of a detachment issue that,
Well, that's
that, I mean, you can use this as a guide to making a decision on something like that, but that's a very different type of request and process.
Okay.
Well, it's a different request, Jonathan, but it's the same issue.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's, that's why, when I read that, I was like, so that, we gotta think about that. We got that memo from Mr. Huber. We had that issue in, by Patriots Way, Ward 1. Any questions on that? Okay, continue.
Going into the lot development standards for the industrial district, 114105. This is looking at a lot of the projects that we've had through the industrial district, looking at the industrial district itself and the way it's built out there, and that this is a productive area of the city that we want to have, income tax creation, maximizing the use of land as productive land uses and productive land within the city. So looking at it and off of a couple different projects that we've had where, things didn't really change, but they needed variances, so kind of looking at the zoning code. So looking at the minimum front yard, 50-foot minimum front yard setback is is excessive. And that creates either parking lot or just green space that doesn't benefit that individual property owner. The 25-foot front yard setback is still ample from a cultural desire for a look of open space, because not only do we have 25 feet, but you could have the tree lawn in the right-of-way between the curb and the property line, which in a lot of the zoning in the industrial district ranges 10 to 15 feet. So it's not like these buildings are going to be straight up on top of the drive lanes of any of the roads in the streets in our industrial district. And in that way, that provides more space for people to do building additions for more production area or better, site circulation or optimal use of the land for the use that they are conducting there. Maximum height, looking at a couple of the projects, particularly Ravago that came through recently, and Kukozing. They had some accessory structures that went over the 25-foot building accessory structure height, but they were hundreds of feet away from, some of them were distanced from the adjacent properties or the perimeter of the site. Additionally, the 50-foot building height may not really be appropriate to industrial development standards now, construction standards, and how industrial buildings are designed. So in light of, maybe not wanting 100-foot buildings 25 feet from a side property line or a rear property line, kind of have it tiered. So it's 50 feet maximum, but you can go up to 80 feet if you're set back at least 100 feet from the site perimeter. And then 25 feet for accessory uses or structures if you're within the required rear yards or side yards of a property. So the 80-foot would be for principal and accessory uses or buildings. So
Questions on that?
that's pretty much that.
So why do you think they had a 50-foot setback in the beginning originally? Why do you think they set it at 50 feet? I mean,
Really hard
was
to
it
say. I mean, we've got a
aesthetics?
lot of pieces in the zoning code that are 50 years old.
Yeah.
That are just legacy from a different time of building buildings, where 35 feet was probably sufficient for an industrial building.
So would it have been for aesthetics or, because it's a big setback? I mean, I agree with you. it's
Or 50, oh, the setback, you mean, yes.
I'm talking about the setback.
It may have just been an aesthetic reason. Our C3 zoning district has no minimum required front yard setback, and that's a commercial area, so you can theoretically be right up on top of the property line. And in terms of the industrial district that we have, it's not like, on Court Street or Public Square, or west side of Public Square, where you have a continuous building line and there's specific character. There's really not specific, block frontage character along any of our industrial district corridors. So reducing it from 50 to 25, we have buildings that are set back 50 feet from front property lines, and some that are set back 300 feet, and they're right next to each other. So there's really not like a continuous, building facade wall along the street. And plus, a lot of our properties are 300, 400 feet wide. So the increment of development is really wide, so it's really not gonna be like we're ruining an architectural aesthetic that's developed over the last, 60 years or so. But it may have just been, Yeah, 50 sounds good, nice lawn, looks bucolic, but is that really doing a benefit to the productive area of the city that we have?
Questions?
No, that's my question.
Just making sure. Any other questions? Continue.
Yeah. Going into the parking requirements for just land uses within the city. In the 2011 to 2013 text, large zoning amendments that were done, this new schedule was created. And for a lot of industrial type land uses, there was very specific parking requirements attached to each one. And it can get really funky when you're actually doing something like Carlisle Brick and Friction. They really didn't, by code, they were required like 350 parking spaces in addition to what they already had, because they were doing that 150,000 square foot addition to they're already 120,000 square foot building. But they didn't really need it because they're shifts and they know how to manage their shifts, and they're not gonna have, 300 employees on a production floor at any given time. And then looking back at our past zoning codes, we actually just had a zoning, the standard was, what's required for parking shall be used enough to satisfy the use, as determined by effectively determined by the applicant and the reviewer, and you just can't put loading or service areas in right-of-way or landscaped areas. That gives a lot of flexibility so that, through a large project, site plan review process, staff, when planning commission kind of says, hey, applicant, what is your needs? Explain it to us and we'll look at it and yeah, that looks great. But very specific parking requirements are very cumbersome and not very flexible.
How come we didn't do anything with respect to commercial big box stores where you have these parking fields that are never filled?
Well, those are very specific. That can range pretty consistent. I really didn't look into that because we're not really getting any new big boxes coming in, and as parking comes and goes and development.
Well, you have one that's for
comes and goes.
sale that would probably like to get rid of some of the parking that's never used.
Well, there is ample parking in that shopping center.
That's what I'm saying, there's too
Way
much.
more than
Too much.
required.
That's what I'm saying, we want to
So-
get rid of it, because that would be parking, the fields of parking there, based upon the size of the big box, I'm sure they had to require 5 for every 1,000, or whatever it was.
This parking requirement for industrial came out of a couple, like Carlisle Brick and Friction Development Review, and the planning commission, some planning commission members specifically saying, can we look at that again? That seems like we're putting too much, blind onerous on top of these.
Understood, but I think,
these
shouldn't we look at
property
the other ones since we're trying to redevelop that?
Right now, the capacity is this text amendment for me, so it's certainly something I can take a look into, especially.
Well, no, I
if
thought we
get
talked about
definitive-
maybe a PUD there or something else, but whoever, now that we know that it's for sale.
I'm not sure if it's for sale or for lease.
for
Or,
lease.
well,
I think it's for
whatever,
lease.
one of the
Yeah.
two.
Right.
Somebody's gonna knock the
That's
building.
another whole item unto itself in terms of
Well, I
specific
get it, but I
development
just,
review.
you're not busy over Christmas, but. I don't know, I just want to see, we should look at it.
I agree.
not
Unfortunately, I
planning
couldn't attend that meeting. I had a family commitment that I had to attend, but I agree with you 100%. We've got way too much parking over there, so we need to get rid of.
Well, maybe it's the wrong zoning classification if we want to encourage a different use, even from a tenant's perspective, to redo something there. Because it's not going to work the way it is.
Whenever somebody's
I
come
agree
to us,
with
I've
that.
said we're open to start looking at conceptual ideas, so.
Well, I just didn't want to take the time of going through this whole process, and all of a sudden we're rushing to go through the process we could be ahead of the game a little bit.
Anything happening there is likely gonna be within the bounds of the special planning district review, and not just simple text amendments to the zoning code for
We'll have to
ministerial
comply with the
administrative
requirements
reviews.
depending on what they want to build, but yes. Okay, just keep that in mind. Okay, sorry for
It's okay.
going off on a tangent. Okay, continue?
Yeah, okay.
Non-conforming signs.
Well, this is Bill's question here, okay.
Wait a minute, I gotta find it now.
48.
So looking at this, and this is, kind of came out of our trial by fire with the Route 42 project redo. A lot of signs, a lot of property was removed as part of the actual land takings on North Court Street or just the temporary construction easements that went outside of the actual, what would eventually be the public right-of-way. You know, looking at this in terms of this code, we had a couple where, you know, I had to say, you know, you're removing a sign, it's not conforming, here's the existing code because you're removing it voluntarily, and it's exceeding more than 50% of its replacement, so you have to meet the code, and we had to go through there was a couple of variance requests accordingly. Additionally, we had, with having a site plan be a trigger, so you could be doing something on a site plan, you know, project that requires site plan review for a site, but you may have an existing non-conforming sign, but that's not part of the project. The trigger says, oh, well, now you have to incorporate that additional cost into this that you may not have known had to plan for. So looking at that and looking at the way those projects have kind of, those processes had kind of run their course, looking at proposing just a simple, you know, removing the sign structure voluntarily removed by the owner. So if they remove it because they want to update it or it's falling apart and they have to remove it, then they're choosing to remove it, then they lose non-conforming status, and then they have to meet the current zoning code, the current sign code requirements.
So does it also remove the part, though, that if it's not voluntary, but if it's just damaged?
Yes, the very last page of the RCA is the Planning Commission recommended modifications. So it would just be removing everything that it would say, you know, with this chapter, when the sign structure is voluntarily removed by the owner. And that would be the trigger.
Okay.
So in the packet, in the RCA, I also have the Planning Commission packet, which differs. The proposed text amendments differ because there was modifications made to it as Planning Commission.
Any other questions?
Eric, got a question?
Bill, you good?
No, I'm good.
Anybody else? No? Okay, well, thanks for explaining that to us. It's always good to know what's going on. Paul's in when you miss the meetings.
I missed one.
Everybody okay? Okay. Motion?
Move to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, work on that other one too. Not over Christmas though. You can work on it January 2nd. 18-222, amending section 3107, revised sanitation job description. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President. Numerous conversations with John, the sanitation superintendent, felt like update the job description for the superintendent as well as the foreman. I believe the last time they were addressed was in 2011. The main changes are related to computer-related items, software proficiency in computers. Given today's email requests and responses necessary, budgeting prep, data, things of that nature, these job descriptions do not have any of that reflecting in them. You know, we came from a time of flip phones to Nextels to smartphones. Technology is evolving. Civil Service did approve these. The only other thing I might want to add is the law director had a request with respect to the fiscal demands, as you see in the request, as a result of a legal matter that it sounds like, I don't know if Greg wants to comment, that he wanted to have addressed in all the job descriptions, and that'll be forthcoming citywide. I believe that's all I have here on this.
On my part of it, we had a situation come up with Chief Bertucci and trying to work through his difficulties medically, where the chief's attorney pointed out that our job descriptions do not include the physical demands of the job under the heading essential job tasks. And so because we separate those out, his interpretation was that physical demands of the job are not essential. So this actually became an issue that we went around and around on. If you recall, our job descriptions were created by the Zashin and Rich firm that redid these descriptions at Mayor Lever's request. This spin on the job description issue is not something I would have ever thought of. But because we did separate it out from what we listed as essential job tasks, it became a problem. And so what I'd like to do is make sure that in our job descriptions, any physical demands associated with the job are considered to be essential, which they typically would be, but for the way we drew up our job descriptions. So I'd like to fix this.
So in Eno's one, he's taking out the physical demands and adding it into the qualifications?
No, it's under essential
essential.
job functions. It becomes essential now instead of a grouping in and of itself. It was crossed out of the separate grouping and added to the essential job functions.
Oh, top, okay, I
Yes,
got
sir.
you.
And Greg Beck, who was our retained counsel through those discussions, as well as a number of the lawsuits we've been involved in, has also said that we would be better to do this across the board with all of them. If this is what is expected of the employees, it should be listed under the essential.
Questions?
Makes sense.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion carries. 18-226, addition of a part-time law clerk. Mr. Hubert.
Thank you. Our longtime secretary, Kim Walters, has worked in the law department for a little over 30 years. I've known in the last 9 months or so that she's looking to retire. I wasn't sure exactly when she was going to retire, and I don't think she was either, as that tends to be guided by recommendations from PERS. On November 27th, she had her second meeting with PERS and gave to me a written notice advising that she is retiring effective January 31st, 2019. In the letter, she let me know that she would like to be off work for 60 days and then come back to work on a part-time basis. The surprising piece of information I did not know is that she would like to work, if she comes back part-time, 24 hours instead of 29 hours. I didn't know that that was going to occur. When I budgeted for this coming year, I anticipated having one full-time secretary and one 29-hour part-time secretary. In our office, we used to have one full-time secretary and a 35-hour part-time person. That got changed with the federal healthcare mandate that was made mandatory on all the part-time positions. So we scaled it back to 29 hours. Our office has been more and more pressed with administrative work. We're now writing more briefs, especially with the new judge. We have more work to do with the creation of DVDs, which are the body cams that become so much a part of our presentation of a case across the road. What has occurred is that the State Highway Patrol has already done this. We used to be provided with the DVD, which describes the camera footage on the patrol car and the body cam, and then we copy that and give that information to opposing defense counsel. The State Highway Patrol has found through technology that they can post this online digitally, and then they want us to create the DVD, which means we have to download all this information and create a DVD, where previously this was all done for us. Which my general take on technology is that it essentially foists off onto you more work so that they don't have to pay anybody to do the work. And that's exactly what's happening in our office. Downloading this information is more time consuming. I anticipated getting through this year with a 29-hour employee. We've had a need for an additional 40-hour person for some time. Now, I can go forward one of two ways. I can simply tell Kim that if she wants to work part-time, she's gonna have to work 29 hours and get us through this year. After discussion with the lawyers in my office and with the staff, we thought that this would be a time to present the problem we have and ask council whether you would authorize an additional slot for an additional part-time person. My thought was to try to have somebody work an additional 16 hours, which would be better for us to deal with the load that our secretaries are handling. Now, I'm not pushing you. Talked to Keith. We presented a budget proposal anticipating 29-hour person. If you prefer I do that, I can do that. I don't think this problem that I'm describing is going to go away, though. What we're experiencing is more work, in part because of the technological changes and also the practical reality that all the departments that I'm representing in the townships and the city are pretty maxed out with more officers than we've ever been representing previously. We're now 15,000 to 16,000 cases a year across the road. Anywhere from 2,000 to 2,500, 2,600 cases are set for trial. We have 4 part-time lawyers, which include myself, handling these cases. So you can do the math. Every week we have a heavy load in terms of cases going to trial. Some of these cases are similar in that we could spin these cases without putting a lot of time into them, but a lot of them we have to put a lot of time into and a lot of brief writing. For the longest time, since I came on as the law director, Jane asked me to put the department together. There was some pretty heavy civil litigation going on. We really have not had a secretary who's able to handle civil briefs and civil pleadings. Kim Walter is a good secretary and a good staff person, but she's really not trained to handle the civil pleading litigation. So what I've done for the longest time is pay my own secretary, Sue, out of my private practice, and I've handled all the city's civil litigation, essentially paying for the secretarial help for the pleadings that I file out of my private practice. And that tradition is long-standing. I mean, if you look back through Bill Young, Tom Phillips, Jack Kinney, all those lawyers have paid for the city's civil pleadings to be handled through their secretaries. It's kind of an informal way it was done. I don't think litigation was as voluminous as it is now. I make enough money as an attorney representing a couple of insurance companies that it doesn't bother me to do that, and I have. But this is really, to do it right, we should have secretaries who can handle civil pleadings and criminal pleadings, and they should be oriented toward the city of Medina's work. We now have, I knew Kim was going to retire, and so I hired a woman named Dina Haswell, who is well-equipped to handle civil pleadings, and she has done that for me now a few times when I've asked her. So we're starting to move more toward a self-sufficient staff in our law department that can handle all of the work that comes in for the city of Medina. But we are short. I don't ask that you make a decision tonight. I asked John, and he was kind enough to put this on at the last minute after we argued about it. For your consideration, we have a growing need. I'm probably going to need a 40-hour person in addition to what we have now at some point coming up. Kim would like to work 24 hours. If you tell me you'd like me to get through this year with a 29-hour person, I'll just tell Kim I can't do this at this point.
Well, next year you're talking about.
Next year, yeah.
But let me ask you a question. You said, okay, you're going to have a 40-hour person that's going to go down $6 an hour.
Right, we're gonna save about $10,000 a year with Dina coming on, because she's not a 30-year employee, she's at the base salary. So there'll be that.
But you have the steps of 5%
Yes.
and the.
Yeah, so
Exactly.
eventually she catches up.
And John asked me,
5
well,
years.
where's the money gonna come from for this additional request? And I told him, I don't know. And so
Well, I'm trying to
that's,
figure this out, so you got the 40-hour that's gonna be saving the 6 and the longevity. You have already a 129-hour person, but you have somebody who only wants to do 24 hours.
exactly.
So you have 5 hours, and you need somebody to fill an extra 14 or 16?
16.
Right?
16,
16, so you have to come up with 11 hours.
yes.
So the savings you're gonna have will cover that 11 hours, it looks like, from the $6 an hour, because you can get, if I'm trying to figure this out.
For a few years.
For a few years,
The
right?
first year would be about 4,000 less.
Right.
But eventually with the steps,
Yes,
They'll
it'll
catch
catch
up.
up.
yeah.
So the problem really arises probably year 3, that you, money, then you
Yeah.
gotta start digging into carry forward to cover it.
Right.
So you can go a couple years, but after that, on the 5-year plan, then we gotta start looking, well, there has to be other funding to come in and help
And
us.
the other reality is, I asked Kim, well, how long are you going to work part-time, 24 hours? So I can try to have some
Right.
reliability, and her answer was, I don't know, so.
Well, so the other question is, I know that every judge has changed, you have different processes. Did you have a meeting with the judge, so he understands what impact he's having on your department?
Well, have you ever done something like that before with a judge?
No, I just, hey, look at me now. Maybe he doesn't understand what he's doing, what the impact he has on other
What
departments.
we've done is file a brief in response to everything he's requested, and it has been an additional load. I mean, all 4 of us have been, he's a young judge, he doesn't know some of the areas of law, he wants briefs so that the lawyers can try to pave the path. We have done a lot more brief writing and filing of pleadings to try to help, and he does an excellent job with the work he's doing. When he comes out with an opinion, it's thorough, but we've really had.
Do you think that'll, I guess my point is, if you talk to the judge, over time, there should be less brief writing, right? As
There
time goes
probably
on,
will be,
you learn
but the way the case numbers are going,
We're up.
you know, now we assume Lafayette
But are
Township.
more cases going to trial? Are they settling more? I mean, there's trends. What's the
We
trend?
just have more officers writing, I mean, every
Yeah.
department is
Well-
maximum officers, we just have more cases.
It's 2 things. It's more officers, younger officers, so they're more active. Not doing anything wrong, they're just, if you're there for 28 years and you're a little tired, you're not writing as many tickets as the young guys coming in. The other issue, though, is the judge is changing some policies where if the case is not dealt within a certain period of time, then it's gonna go to trial. So the defense, at that point, even if they could get a deal, they can't. They're going to trial now. He's also made a decision not to waive any points. Sometimes people would come in and say, I'll plead the ticket if you just simply waive the points. If they don't agree to waive the points, then why not take it to trial?
Mhm.
So more and more of those cases that before had been dealt are not being dealt now, which is keeping our prosecutors every 10
But
minutes.
does he understand the impact when he does these decisions, what impact it has on?
He understands that he's the judge, and the judge sets the rules of the court, and this is the way I want my court to run. And Greg has been over a number of times, Greg and Matt both, to try to talk with him and explain that this is the way we've done it, this is how things have worked before, and he's respectfully listens, but he's gonna run the court the way he thinks the court should
Does
run.
he understand that we can budget the court the way we think the court should be budgeted?
That's up to the council.
Well,
to
this
decide.
discussion
Right.
really isn't involved in John, I mean.
I just wanna make
you
sure-
look down at Wadsworth has half the cases, less
I
than
got
half,
the,
and they have 2 full-time secretaries.
I got the
handling work.
statistics, just if it's, my name's Matt Lanier, by the way. I've been prosecutor in this office. Part-time, started in like 1999, 2000, but since 2002, I've been there on a weekly basis. So I did some checking with Wadsworth. They're gonna have, in 2018, 6,000 traffic and criminal cases filed in that court. Yeah, some people will just plead at arraignment. Medina municipal court's gonna have 14,500, so not quite 3 times. In the Wadsworth Law Department, they have 2 full-time administrative assistants. They make $51,342 each. So they have $102,684 plus benefits times 2 to handle at most 6,000 cases, where we have at most 14,500. And either set of numbers, whether we just kept going with Kim and Dina the way they were at about $87,000, or again, it would be reduced under this proposal, even with 2 part-time and 1 full-time, you're starting at about 83,000. So, you know, we probably, when we had 75 hours 20 years ago, we didn't have 14,500 cases. Now we're down to 69 hours of help, and every agency has way more officers.
So I get it, and I don't know if you want to give a seminar to Wadsworth, explain how to be efficient. I mean, you guys are doing great. I mean, that's something.
They're very comfortable there.
Well,
It's working well.
No, I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
They'll be very
The
comfortable.
other thing is with all these videos is, as the videos come in, they have recorded everything after the motion in limine and for the trial. Much of that is excluded. So then it falls on us to prepare a redacted trial video. And the only one in the office that can do that right now is me. So for 4 lawyers and 2 staff people, I'm the one doing all video redactions. And rare do you get one in where there's not talk about a prior offense or prior arrest or something where we can just put the whole thing in. Almost always, we're making a redacted version, we're going over 2 versions of video. The unredacted, which goes into evidence, the redacted, which gets played to the trier of fact, also goes into evidence. Hope is our staff at 69 hours has no time at all to really be able to address that. The hope was, B, that maybe these extra hours would also, we could shift some of that IT stuff to one of those 2 part-time staff members, get them up to speed on the editing software, how it's done, the format the court needs. So it's not just more cases. The advancements in technology have required more on our part. It's not uncommon to have 4 or 5 videos on a case. Every officer has a body cam, every cruiser has a video cam, and then you have multiple 911 calls coming in. So we have audio, and then audio visual. You open one of our files, and it'd be 4, 5, 6 videos before they're edited, and then that times 2 if we got to edit them for the trial. So the work is at the most it's ever been, and so I think, I think a compromise to the second 40 hours being 2 part-time people, there'll be some savings on the benefits. And now we run into trouble because people get sick, people, have some vacation. We have times with just no one in the office but one of us, no one to answer the phones, no one to make the copies. Not a ton, but it does happen. With 3 full-time and 2 part-time, I think.
No, you guys make the argument for that, that makes sense, and it's a cost savings over a couple of years, and I get it.
Yeah.
But the other question is, do you ever talk to the judge, maybe you can implement another fee to help pay for your cost of the additional burden that you guys have?
Well, in all honesty, the court is so fee-heavy as it is, it's just, we're paying for courts, and people go over there and are absolutely stunned at the amount of money they are paying for court costs.
I get it too, but I mean, justice isn't cheap.
That's something we can talk about, that budget
That's
process.
like a movie.
So I wondered what your thoughts were about, do you want me to just go forward with a 29-hour person?
No, I think what you proposed makes a lot of sense. And I think that
And
the savings for a couple of years, I mean, there's no increase in your budget for a couple of years because you can work within your budget with this change occurring.
And to
The
be honest,
question is
we're going
long-term,
through our
yeah.
law library, excuse me, sorry for interrupting, and we're potentially willing to, maybe cut back a little in the law library that we have. We can hoof it over to the county if we need to. We might create anywhere $1,000 to $2,000 in savings there in addition, which can maybe get us to year 4 before we really feel it.
Well, no, we're trying to figure out a long-term solution.
Well, the other thing out of fairness, John, is Greg has never asked for any carry forward. So any money that's been left over at the end of any year has always been kicked back to the general fund. So this may be a time that, if they can save a little bit, we do need to squirrel it away to get to those years going out. so that we don't have to. I mean, we'll do everything in our power to defer it as long as we possibly can, but I'm next door and through there day in and day out. And what Matt's describing is exactly right. Matt's here 5 days a week. He handles Brunswick cases Wednesday afternoon. Other than that, he's in the office from start to finish. And nobody's sitting around with nothing to do. I mean, everybody is scrambling, and some things are still, you know, with all due respect, are falling through the cracks because you can only juggle so much.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out a solution for cooperative. I understand judges are elected, they have their own rights, but there's gotta be some understanding of the impact that they're making. I guess that's all I'm pointing out.
Well, he's agreed to sit down with us in January and kind of
That's great.
Monday morning quarterback the first year, and I agree with you. I think it's something I'm gonna bring up to him.
And he has not been unresponsive
No.
to
I
what
know.
we ask. His door's been open. I need to talk to him. He's listened. When he's needed to make some adjustments, he has. So it's.
I mean, we had the same issue with Judge Chase about the number of probation officers, and we've discussed that over, because you want to keep adding them. With Nancy, with the number of clerks, you know, sure, the solution, it's easy just to add, but that's not a solution. That's just a Band-Aid to throw more money at it, so.
Well, Judge Werner is very, when he starts to go through it, he's very much attuned to the costs, and he's all about keeping it to a minimum.
Okay, well, you can go forward with that. We'll probably vote on it in the next council meeting in January, but go through the process of figuring how you're gonna, who you're hiring, how you're gonna solve it. So,
Okay, many thanks.
Anybody have any questions? Is that
You
the
want to
plan?
defer voting through finance now, so we could take it to council the January 14th?
Well, I'm okay with the way he's doing it, because he's
I would
using
just-
his money.
Because otherwise, you know, this
Yeah, it's a
person's going to be
lengthy
gone and
process.
we're still going to be waiting.
And I think it was with the emergency clause.
Right.
I'm good. I'd respectfully ask for that.
Would be approved with the emergency clause?
Second with the emergency clause?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just have a question. Is it going to be, for the salary and benefits, could I change it? Is it going to be 16 or another 29-hour part-time?
I think it
No,
has to be
one
a
at
29.
24 and one at 16. Well, not to
Right.
exceed 29.
Right.
We know we're going to try to stay within 40 between the two.
Right.
Because his budget's not changing.
So,
So it's gonna be
we have to
another
add
29
one more
or less.
part-time clerk to
yeah,
the
I
law
know that,
department.
but I didn't know how many hours.
29,
Not to
Each
exceed
of
40.
them not to exceed 29.
because one's gonna work 24.
We'll handle that internally. We're not going to go over 40.
Right.
I'm committing to you.
And the way we control that is it's just, Greg, you know, like, no more money. So he'll control his cost.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, now we go to 18-227, increase PO 2018-1554, Northwest Services for the Sanitation Department. Nino, you back on.
Thank you, Mr. President. We thought we were gonna make it through the end of the year with this PO as well, that started in January. However, the increase in steel prices, we need to up it by $500, so that's not much just to get by through the end of the year.
Would you approve?
Second.
Are we okay with that?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 18-228, increase PO 2018-754, Walter and Haverfield for the Law Department. Mr. Hubert.
Walter Halverfield, this year has been a little extraordinary, particularly with respect to all the time and lawyers' time that has gone into the cell tower issues. They represented us to challenge the state law that forced us to have cell towers on our right-of-way. That litigation resulted ultimately in the state legislature backing away from the strident manner that they acted in the first place. Walter and Haverfield represented us in the negotiation with the state legislators to come out with a second bill on cell tower installation that is a little bit more friendly to the municipality, certainly a fair bit more than the first round. That was expensive, and then they also helped to draft legislation that we are going to ask the council to adopt concerning controlling our right-of-ways, and so their bill this year is going to be close to $25,000. Todd Hunt has been representing us, advising the Planning Commission on the Fetchco litigation, and they've also been helpful in analyzing the issues presented with the LGBT legislation. So I think I'm approaching close to $25,000, and accordingly that results in this request for some additional money. I don't anticipate that next year is going to be as problematic, or at least I hope not.
Is this coming out of general administration? Is that what that number is? The 0704?
704 is law.
Oh, there's sufficient funds still in the law? Or?
Well, I think they're running out.
Yeah, that's what I thought. All right.
So he's got in the wrong line item that he needs, or whoever submitted this, it should be new appropriation needed versus money in the existing account.
I think Liz wrote this together.
That's what my question.
Right.
I think there's money in the account. Where's
That's
it?
what Greg said, he thought he was out.
Well, the purchase order's out.
The purchase
Oh, the
order's
purchase
out,
order's
but
out.
there's money on the line.
Oh, okay, all right, so then we don't need a new appropriation.
Now,
Sorry.
this wasn't gonna go to council tonight, and now, but we had asked, and last month, council added 10,000 in this purchase order. The history is, it started out at 15, last month we increased it by 10. We've only spent $13,000, a little over $13,000 so far this year, so we thought last month, 10 will be fine to get us to the end of the year, but a whole bunch of this stuff has hit at once, so we now have invoices on the accounts payable desk for $12,000, gets us over 25. So what you've already approved, we can't pay the invoices that we already have, and then we still don't have their invoices yet for November and December. So that's why we're asking for an additional 15. A lot of this stuff, these issues that Greg talked about have hit at once, but in order to pay them before the end of the year, we would need to get these to go to council tonight to get up to $40,000 authorization, because we're already over 25 with the invoices we have in hand.
Well, I don't know about tonight, Keith. If I call Todd and tell him they gotta wait on the money, it's not gonna be a problem.
All right, as long as when Todd complains, he complains to you and not me, I'm happy with that. I'm okay.
All right. Any other questions?
I don't like to spring this kind of thing on the council and have you decide these things overnight, so I'm much more comfortable talking to, I mean, this is taxpayer money, you have to have time to think about these things, and so I would prefer we don't do this tonight.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Second.
With the emergency clause? Second, including the emergency clause.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Okay, 18-217, Lindenwood Lake Dam and Outlet Structure, an update from Mr. Patton.
Thank you. Council may remember earlier this year, we met with a group of homeowners around the Forest Meadows, Falling Oaks Lake. I think we met before a board meeting. At that time, basically, they communicated to council that they would like the city to take the lead in a project to replace and improve their outlet structure and their dam. And council, the property owners would then be assessed for the project, the cost of that. I think council was comfortable with that and instructed us to move forward with that, and we are. Basically, this is the same situation. Lindenwood Lake is a dam in Forest Meadows, Lindenwood Lakes and Forest Meadows. They are in need of replacement of their outlet structure and repair of the dam. We're to the point where to finish the plans, we do need to hire a consultant. This particular dam, as opposed to Falling Oaks, falls under the auspices of the ODNR, so they have to approve these plans. And what they're requiring is that we do some additional testing and get some a person familiar with dam reconstruction involved with the project. So I took that request to Board of Control, and at that time was suggested that we maybe have another meeting where we meet with the property owners around the dam and have everyone come to our same sort of understanding, where they understand that we can do this, but they will be ultimately responsible for the cost of that. So that's why I wanted to come and mention it to council and see if maybe we can arrange a meeting in January with the folks.
Yeah, I think we do need a meeting, because I guess the question would be we did this in Falling Oaks, I guess, right? Is this?
Correct.
So, and it was just the adjacent property owners to the lake, or was it surrounding property owners?
It is just everyone abutting the lake is who we're looking at. We didn't pass any legislation, so there's nothing, not a document to look at, but I think that was the intention.
And in this one, isn't there more than one lake? I thought,
No.
isn't there another?
Well, there's several lakes down
Yeah,
there.
there's several lakes. This is not the one that's between, or runs along Hickory Grove. That's not that one.
That's not that.
And the one that runs behind Wayne Hamilton.
But there's other ones, this is gonna be one that'll lead to others, right?
Well, we already dealt with the association that I belong to, which is the next lake north of the one we're talking about now. Our association was large enough that we didn't have to have the same
Assessment.
assessment. We were able to, assess each homeowner for that. They were able to pay for it at that time. But this association group is a lot smaller. There is two more lakes north of, well, three more lakes north of the Lindenwood Lake that they're talking about now. Are the shore, one off Shorewood, Cloverdale, off Hickory Grove, and back in Hickory Grove. But there's actually a total of 4 lakes, is that right, Mr. Gerschbacher, is he still here?
Yes.
Total of 4 lakes. So our lake, which is number 2, starting from the school, going north, has already been dredged, and the inlet and outlet has been replaced at our cost. While the city paid for the inlet where the water comes in, but not, they couldn't pay for the dam part where the water goes out. So there's 2 more lakes that may at some point in time.
So you wanna have a meeting in January so that you can do the work in the spring? Is that what the goal is?
Yeah, I think the work needs to be done as soon as possible this summer, probably more than spring,
No.
when the rain, the water's down.
And they've been talking about this for a long time.
Yes.
I've been in-
Overflow is collapsing.
Right.
We need it soon.
And we were helping them as much as we could. We thought we could engineer it, plan it like we did with the FOHA, but because ODNR is involved, we don't have the credentials to meet what they require, so that's caused another little snag for us.
All right. No, I think that's a good plan, so that everybody's on the same page. Mr. Gerschbacher?
Just a couple of comments. One, because of ODNR, this is dragged out more than a year longer than we had anticipated. We have an overflow that's collapsing. I'm not sure it's going to make it through the winter, and that's going to create additional problems. So moving forward, literally as quickly as possible would be helpful, and I think the cost savings. If I might just, a little editorial here, comment too, this lake problem isn't just the surrounding owners' problem. These lakes are all part of the city stormwater system, and an important integral part, and something I don't think has ever really been planned for, maybe to the extent that it should, relying on the private homeowners to keep these retention basins, as which they are, in good working order. And after living on this lake for 40 years, I can tell you, they all eventually silt up, they all eventually wear out and become an economic problem that is foisted pretty much on the immediate lake owners, while that stormwater system really drains a much larger area. And in our case, I think it's over 20 acres, including the high school, and in many cases, a much larger area. So it serves much broader neighborhoods, and I think it's something that ought to be looked at long-term as well in regard to requiring when those lakes are put in, that some kind of homeownership association be required and some kind of funding mechanism to support the maintenance, ongoing maintenance of those be required. Fortunately, we were able to get all but one of our homeowners to sign on to a homeowners association. I'm not sure all the others would be that fortunate after the fact. And as a result, we are able to, in the long term, pay for it, but it's a huge cost to support not only our own homes, but that whole watershed that retention basin fulfills a need for. So I think that long term, we ought to be looking as a community and some mechanism to help fund, to maintain that stormwater system in a good way. Otherwise, they'll simply get neglected, not done, and not function and cause serious long-term problems. So I guess I would encourage looking at not only this, our immediate need here, but a long-term need of all of the community lakes, and there's a lot of them in this community, so it's not a minor problem, but it only grows worse as it becomes neglected. We're talking a fairly large amount of money that we're gonna have to bear, and we're willing to do that, but not every homeowner is in a position to fork out 10, 15,000, whatever it's gonna take to correct as much need as we have right now, including the dredging, which we don't have a area to take dredging to, which is a huge part of the expense. Again, I think it's a long-term problem that the city ought to be looking at a long-term solution for the dredging, maintenance of these huge retention basins that serve the whole community.
I think we could probably talk about that a little bit during our meeting too. I mean, you're right. I mean, there's benefits to both. There's a benefit to the city, and of course, there's a benefit to you as a landowner having a lake.
Absolutely.
So that's the dichotomy that you have to.
The rub in this conversation, and we've talked about this before, has to do with the state law. The state law places upon the property owner the burden of these maintenance of these lakes. And when I say rub, the rub is that if we get involved, well, right now, we have immunity from liability for these lakes. And whether the state was wise in creating the system they did is open to debate. Mr. Gerspacher's right, we benefit from the system in place, but the state has placed the responsibility not on us, but on the property owner, and gives us immunity from responsibility and liability by following that format. The more we get involved in maintaining private property owners' property lakes, the more we have a loss of immunity and the more we take on liability. So these are the issues that come up.
And as I explained to Clint before in our conversations, Mr. Huber's right, and I can't remember the timeline. It's probably been 8-10 years ago. I can't remember when we had our lake dredged. Our inlet, which the city did take responsibility for because of the Attorney General's ruling, the state's ruling, they were able to assist with the inlet. But the outlet, what Mr. Huber explained, they could not, the dam itself and the outlet, they could not take responsibility for. We ran into the same concerns and arguments that you have, Mr. Gerspacher, but their ruling was, since there's houses that enjoy the lake, that are on the lake, and we actually own pieces of the lake in our property deeds. The city would have to assume liability if they participated in the outlet, and B, since they would take responsibility, that the rest of the population of the city of Medina could come down and enjoy your lake too.
You don't want people in your backyard?
Well, no, that wouldn't bother me, but there's some people.
Well, one thing that we have to consider is Forest Meadows Lake Park Association. There's no individual, there's no houses around it. And it is part of that detention system that Mr. Garsbacher referred to, and it is silting in. When I first moved there, it was about 25 feet deep in its most deepest point. It's down to about 15 feet now, or up to, whichever how you want to phrase it. That will silt in at some point, and there's no way to assess any homeowner for that. So that's something that we have to consider.
A couple additional points. Liability can be handled with insurance. That is a spurious issue in my mind. It's something that ought to be added into the cost. But more importantly, the city has a bigger stake in this dam. They have a 36-inch sewer running through our dam. So it goes, you've got a 36-inch trunk line sewer that's going with it. So I would, again, encourage you to act quickly on this before it becomes a really more serious problem.
And if I'm not mistaken, the dam between Denny's Lake and the Association Lake also has a storm sewer running through it as well.
He's talking sanitary.
It's, or sanitary, okay.
We have a
here's a
36-inch sanitary main trunk
Okay.
line going through the dam.
Yeah, somebody's got to have some responsibility with that too, I agree. But we have a storm sewer going through ours, if I'm not mistaken, between the two. And, that dam goes. Because we traced that out. Pat, I think you were with that back in 2002, 2003. We traced that out when we found that it came down from shoreward, along shoreward,
Right.
through and down into that detention basin behind Westwood, where it is definitely part of the city system flowing through that way. So these are things that we're going to have to consider. We'll talk about it.
All right, Mr. Penn, set up a meeting, first couple
How
of
would
weeks
you
of
just be
January.
like a council of the whole meeting, or what?
Yeah, council home meeting.
You might want to include the one that's.
You can talk to the clerk,
Jefferson.
maybe you guys can get together for dinner.
Include the one between Jefferson and Forest Meadows and Meadowlark too.
Well, I don't know if we can do that. These are the folks coming to us, asking us to do.
Yeah, we
this.
gotta do theirs first, we can't get everybody, it'll
Okay.
be,
All right.
the meeting will never end, and nor will anything ever get resolved, so,
Okay.
one at a time. Okay, anything else to come before finance? This is the last time this year you can do it. All right, meeting's adjourned.